All right, welcome to episode 20 of the Marketing Operators Podcast. Today, we are doing another Twitter deep dive. We're going into some tweets on reaching new audiences with creative, the types of people you attract with certain types of content, and whether or not retargeting is a good strategy or not. Thank you again to our sponsors, Motion, Prescient, and Richpanel. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and share with some buddies.
When we talk about our premium sponsor Motion, we talk about adding analytical rigor to your creative strategy. We say Jones Road uses it, Hexclad uses it, Ridge uses it, True Classic uses it, but why? Why are all these nine-figure brands using Motion? And as a head of growth or marketing leader, you're constantly looking for ways to make your team more effective, improve processes, and make better decisions faster. For Ridge, we're able to organize our content more cleanly, standardize the metrics that we measure, and make better decisions quicker, ultimately leading to stronger business outcomes. We're using Motion on all of our weekly calls. As soon as we launch a new campaign, a new product, or we're just managing our evergreen campaigns, we take a bottoms-up approach to how is each piece of content performing, and ultimately how is that leading to us hitting our ultimate goals. Today, you can get 50% off your first month when you mention the Marketing Operators Podcast to the Motion sales team. Make sure to visit motionapp.com to learn more.
All right, gents, we made it to episode 20. I think it feels like a milestone because it's a nice even number, but I feel like 25 and 50 are the next big ones. But no, it feels good. It feels good to hit 20, that multiple of 10. I will say I was driving into the office this morning, and I got halfway through and realized I had this big plan. I ordered a case of Recess. You guys know those the Recess drink. They're one of they have an awesome product. For anyone that doesn't know, it's like the sparkling adaptogenic, I guess water. Maybe it's not technically water, but I think they have an awesome product. They taste great. The adaptogens really do work. I think those products are legit. And I was like, I'm going to show up Cody. I'm going to have this big, punchy, pastel-colored like pink can. And I forgot it. And then I see Cody's drinking the 365 water today. I'm like, mine would have totally showed him up today.
You would have beat me, man. I got the generic stuff today.
Dang. All right, what do you got? What do you got
Typical
today?
Marketing Operators fashion, Fairness and Bevs.
Yep.
I got the 365. I guess just came with the Whole Foods order, and I got this Gator Light Zero. It's just like super humid, and I'm not feeling great, so trying to catch up on some hydration.
Always. Connor got Cody sick through the pod.
Yeah, I'm that contagious. Yeah, I'll apologize for the coughing again. I'm still working. I'm on like week 2 of it, so forgive me, listeners.
We've just been grinding too hard, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel that. Connor, speaking of grinding, you guys got your sweeps opening, and what? I've been refreshing your site every day because I'm just like, I can't wait to see it because I'm like so into it now. We've been talking a lot about it offline too. So it's coming up, right? Is that like this weekend? I thought it was early August.
It's Thursday. It's 8/1,
Nice.
9 a.m. PST. So yeah, we're in the home stretch. It's been like all hands on deck. It's by far like our most robust rollout. So we've done a lot of fine tuning over the last couple of weeks. It's taken quite a bit of grinding. Yeah, it's been a handful, but we're super excited. And we did in-depth coverage of it a couple episodes. So if anybody's listening now, checks out ridge.com because this will come out after it launches. You can go back to episode 17. Talks all about sweepstakes.
And you guys do see a pretty big pop, it sounded like, even though you're not doing any sort of discounting, or is it not? Because I don't know what to expect. I'm going in with very low expectations. I'm not expecting a major pop. I am curious to like look at our year over years and see how those year over years compare to our evergreen year over years.
Right.
So that'll be interesting to me, but I'm not expecting to see like bang 7-figure days or even close to 7-figure days or anything like that.
Yeah. So our first one was 2021. Yeah. Our first one was 2021, and that year over year was like pretty strong. I don't remember the percentage right off the top of my head. This is what I'll say about sweeps is from a commercial success perspective, we're probably over-indexing on effort. We're working really hard for something that is not all that significant of a pop. There's lots of value. Like, we think it's a really cool campaign. We get to talk about something other than our products. It's a great kind of like brand building moment. I think, and what I'm hoping to see this year is like, I think if we can get the mechanics right, the right prizes, the right referral system, the right retention system, that it should be a really meaningful period. I've been saying I think years from now, this 6-week period could be a $40 million campaign. I think it could be the next McDonald's monopoly. So that's the goal. And what I would like to see this year is a semblance of a much higher ceiling. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, we probably don't invest more. Like every year it's escalated. We probably stop escalating them unless we really start to see that that like outsized return. So that's our approach. It's definitely kind of, we're still in an experimental phase.
Yeah. I as we're building it out for the first time, I'm like uncovering, turning over stones and all this. I can see how you can get. I mean, there's so many details
Yeah.
related to these sweeps that you can go down these rabbit holes, and I'm like, I need to reel myself back in and just be like, we just need to do, the 80% of the things that are the most important, like just well enough this year. So it's very clear what we're doing, and like I'm almost having to stop myself from thinking through like, well, what about that? I'm like, no, like that's
Totally.
probably too much. So, and I can imagine you guys have just kind of gotten more and more detailed and nuanced with the sweeps over the years. Is that the case?
Totally. And this year more than ever. So that's why I'm thinking like just we have a bunch of tools at our disposal from an acquisition perspective. We've got some retention tools in terms of like transparency and how we're like re-engaging customers within this campaign period. We have a referral system we're building out. We've got a ton of awesome content, a ton of partners. We're getting it in videos of like 20 creators. The logistics of
Nice.
getting 2 trucks to 20 different creators in 2 different cities between Salt Lake and LA
Oh
is
god.
insane. Today we got this college kid that I hire, comes by, helps us drive him around. It's really a team effort. So it's a ton of manual work, like physically driving cars around as well as digital work. So yeah, the rabbit hole goes deep. You gotta be careful with it.
That's awesome. I truly cannot wait to see you guys launch. So congrats on being on the eve. And good luck.
Massive congrats. Yeah, knock on wood. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Cody, what about you? How's the new product launch going? Have you seen a steady state, or are you kind of in the back end of that now?
Yeah, man, it's been good. We like I said the other day, we ordered as much inventory as we could, 65K units. We are down to the last shade. So in UK and in US, we've got one shade. The one that was going a little bit slower, we just didn't forecast it perfectly in terms of like the distribution of each of them, but always a learning experience. But it's been great. Made our July. I was feeling really good about our forecast for like for most of it, and now we're way above. It's great. We're much more efficient than we wanted. Contribution margin is much higher. We're going to anniversary this. Like, we're going to do this every year. Of course, today was Monday. I went to our chief product and ops officer, and I'm like, when do we have to place the order? Like, let's place the order as soon as possible, because we had a production max for this, kind of like Connor Rich has had for travel. So I was like, let's get that order, and as soon as possible, let's bump that up. Like, let's do everything we can. No, it's great. I think we're feeling really good about our calendar and our launch calendar, and just having these little promotional things to kind of help us with the summer slump. It feels good, not gonna lie.
What when you say a production max, what does that mean exactly?
I think it was packaging, actually. Yeah, I found out today it was packaging. So I think that's just kind of like the limiter. And for whatever reason, we were only able to buy that much packaging at the time that we placed the order. So that was like the most I could do. I guess the manufacturer could have filled it if we had it, but for whatever reason, it's coming from China, and for whatever reason, that's often the case. So a lot of our other stuff, like when we do the mini Miracle Bombs, we actually produce them domestically or buy them domestically. But yeah, that was the issue with this. So hopefully we can get ahead of that and order quite a bit this time.
Got it.
But yeah,
So
overall,
great. If you go back to the manufacturer then and say, hey, look at our volume, then will they then take that information, go order more raw materials, and all of a sudden you have a new ceiling? Is that, I don't know this part of the business much, so I'm
Yeah,
curious.
neither do I, so I should not be speaking about this. No, not raw materials, but packaging. Yeah, so we've got plenty of materials. So we same people that do like our regular Miracle Bombs and stuff, they'll fill this. But yeah, it's just the component, of the packaging. Yeah, for whatever reason, that's just how much they're able to either make or give us at a time. So we will get that order in early, because I was telling our chief product officer today, I was like, before you guys buy, like, let me give a little bit input, because I was showing her just like our performance, and I was like, this was not the most I could have spent. Like, I don't want you to buy double thinking that like, nah, that's what we'll go through next year. Like, we could have sold double now if I could have, like, if we pushed on the gas. So like, we'll go pretty aggressively because we really held back. We just obviously didn't want to overspend and sell out quicker and reduce margin. We wanted to be able to maximize the margin of what we're selling. But we feel really good about it, and it's great to see. So, it's obviously one of those good problems, but great customer feedback. I'm very excited to see what some of the retention and LTV looks like of these cohorts. But yeah, it's been great. July's been great. Great comparatively. It's not going to be one of our stronger months, but still, it's 60-70% up from last year, which we feel really good about.
Nice. Well, good things happening on both fronts. All right, let's jump into it. So we're doing another. We all had a lot of fun when we were responding to some of Taylor's tweets and Cody's tweets. I think it's a good format because Twitter generally doesn't lend itself to being as nuanced, but a talk show can be. So we got a bunch of tweets lined up. We're just gonna run through them and kind of break down our thoughts on them and ask some questions and look at some responses. So gonna start off with one from Cody, and this is kind of it's additive to some of the conversations we've been having the last 2 to 3 episodes about creative diversity and the importance of it. So Cody tweeted on July 28th, let's say you focus on creative diversity with the goal of, quote, unlocking new audiences. How do you know if you've actually unlocked a new audience? Cody, do you wanna maybe summarize that a little bit, kind of what you mean?
Yeah, for sure. So there's, we've talked about it a bunch, and I think for good reason. There's a huge focus on creative diversity this year. Meta's focusing on it. Creative being the targeting, and all of our brands are at scale, and as you get to scale, I think the hardest challenge is you just reach the same people over and over. I do think it's the biggest issue on Meta right now, and there's a few things that you can do to try to unlock new reach and reach new people and ultimately convert them. But one of the things a lot of people talk about is creative and using different types of creative, whether it's different formats, different concepts, different messaging, different value props to reach new audiences, which sounds great in theory. I totally buy it. It makes sense just, if you understand just very little about the algorithms and AI and how the systems are working, like it totally makes sense. But I was just thinking about it the other day of like, how would you actually know? Because it's something that I still think we're struggling to do nearly as much as we want. And we are trying to produce diverse creatives, and we're trying to get them working. And we're trying to get them working with the aim of ultimately reaching these net new incremental audiences that will purchase. And it's not something that is, it's super easy to measure. And there are ways, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts, how you would look at that. There definitely are some ways, but like for the most part, people don't really know, and they're focusing on creative diversity, and they should be. But I don't think people really know if they're reaching new audience with it. So it was kind of a rhetorical question, but I was very curious on how people are thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a fun thought exercise. Like, is there ways to quantify it, and actually prove? Because you could argue that if you have an ad account that has thousands or tens of thousands of orders passed back into it, and if you've scaled to that level, with a certain type of creative, that even if you launch a new creative with new angle, that Facebook might say, all right, well, this is all the signal I have. We're going to show that to a similar audience. Is that could be the case. Like that would be a valid argument, I think, based on how the machine learning works. So, yeah, I'm curious. I have some thoughts on this. I'm sure you guys do. Do either Connor, you want to kick us off? Do you have any thoughts on ways to kind of validate or quantify?
No, I don't have an answer to Cody's question. I wanted just some additional context because we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, and I just want to flag. I brought this up to someone. Like, I worry we're like moving the goalposts for the goal of paid social. And I think I said last week, we're talking Zuck's book. This is very much like an agenda from the Meta team, I think, because the way that they have been at least promoting the idea of measuring reaching new audiences is with this idea of a rolling reach report that says like, it looks at how many unique users you're reaching over long periods of time. We talked about it a bit last week. So one way that they would say it, which I guess this is somewhat of an answer, is you could say, hey, I'm going to launch this new piece of creative. I'm going to look at my reach, up until last month, year to date. We just did this internally. So let's say this as an example. Year to date, we've reached 70 million unique people in the US for our wallet business, all of our wallet ads. If we launch a bunch of new creative and then we do that same test and we say, hey, we've reached 75 million unique people, then we could say, hey, our new creative does seem to be reaching new people. We could also look at last month and say we only reached 500,000 new unique people last month. So the diversity actually went from 100,000. The diversity helped us reach 5 million rather than the 100,000 that we might get otherwise. That would be one way to do it that the meta reps say. And there's other ways to do that. And like, I want to hear your guys' opinions, but I feel like, Cody, part of the reason you're asking is because this has become such a, like, it almost feels like a little bit of a wild goose chase. Like people, they make it the goal without actually understanding like whether you are achieving that goal of even reaching new audiences, much less actually reaching new audiences and generating an incremental profit, which should really be the goal. So I just want to talk about that quickly because I feel we're like, Meta has like successfully moved the talking points from like, how are we producing profit to like, how are we reaching net new unique people?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the goal is to acquire customers and do so profitably, and reaching new audiences just something that you do on that path, on that journey. If we wanted to reach the most people and the most new people as possible, we can do that. We can just put all of our budget into reach ads, all of our budget into upper funnel. That's Meta's book. That's talking, Zug's book. That's obviously not the goal. And, again, you guys know I'm a fan of reach campaigns at a very small percentage of revenue to help with that over time. But I do think there are people who are very skeptical of meta reps and other reps in general. I don't want to single out meta reps, and I think meta reps are amazing, but of reps in general, I do think people are very skeptical of these platforms and channels selling this reach inventory. So I totally get that. I agree. And I do think there's a lot of that happens. So I just want to throw that out there. The goal is to acquire new customers. And I think one way theoretically to reach new customers is with a reach campaign. The other way is keeping it purchase optimized, but with a different type of creative. And I think that is closer to the bread and butter of a lot of D2C brands. And I think why a lot of people are talking about, let's reach new audiences with purchase objective, but doing it with the creative.
Totally. Yeah, no, and that's a good point. And I wasn't accusing you of of like missing the point there, but like, I just think generally the conversation seems to be like getting away from what the core objective is, in my opinion, or at least I worry that it is. So anyway, to answer Cody's question specifically, I would say rolling reach. How else would you guys measure it?
I think, Connor, you also bring something up where it's like, you're not going to, I think attribution's a great example. This whole attribution conversation has, in some cases, swung so far into this like crazy, like meta introspection direction where it's like, all right, should we just not do anything then because we can't perfectly measure it? It's like, no, we're not going to not roll out linear TV. We're not going to not do out of home just because we can't perfectly measure it in the attribution tools that we have. The same way that we're not going to not roll out different creatives just because we're worried that we can't exactly quantify whether or not it's going to a new audience. Like you still got to be a marketer and follow these psychological principles and marketing best practices, and then do your best to measure it. But I do think it's kind of a fun exercise. I thought Dave, is it Recook? Am I saying his last name correctly? Dave Recook?
I think so.
Yeah. So I thought Dave had some good like easy ways to validate, like ways that are accessible to anybody running Facebook ads. So Dave said, looking at auction overlap. So can you talk to your rep and can they pull any backend data showing whether or not the ad sets with each creative are overlapped or not? Different in age distribution or gender distribution. That's a pretty easy one just to look at in your ad account breakdowns. CPM difference, right? If you're going after different audiences, if you're competing for different audiences, then in theory, the price to go after those different audiences should be different. And then he also made a cost cap reference where he says that if they are going after the same audience, then you're probably going to see one, let's say they're theoretically in two different ad sets, both using cost caps. The creative under each is in theory targeting a new audience. If spend in one of those cost caps is not throttling spend in the other, then he's saying then that means they're probably not competing for the same audience, because if they were, they would probably be throttling one another. So I thought those were some interesting ways to get some like in-platform data, and that's pretty quick and dirty. I'll stop there. Do you guys have any thoughts about that? Anything else in platform wise? I think placements would be another interesting one.
Yeah,
like
definitely seeing any indications that spend has shifted. Whether it's different ages, different placements. different genders. Yeah, if there's anything like that, I think that's super helpful. That's probably one of the main ones I would look at. I think this is always is like, how scientific are you trying to be? How detailed and like granular do you need to be? Because I think Dave's are really good, and I love Dave. I think he's brilliant. But I think some of them are very like the CPM one. I don't know. That's a little tough.
It's
I
like
feel like there could
wishy-washy, I
be,
think.
yeah, a little bit. That's like hard to say. Oh, I definitely reached a different audience because my CPMS are different. There's like so many factors built on that.
I agree. So I went. We've been doing a lot of like cohort overlay in our customer data platform recently. Uh, we all here use UTMs depending on the channel, so we can see which channel they're coming from, which campaign within that channel, and getting as granular as we need to be. So one idea, you could a lot of Shopify orders, assuming they had a conversion after a last click from a channel, will have a UTM appended to that order in Shopify. So one idea was to basically cohort together orders based on UTM. So if you have like a content UTM in Facebook and you can cohort orders based on different angles, in theory, you could put them into your customer data platform and then overlay those orders to your entire Shopify order ecosystem, but then B, just like any sort of massive data set like an Axiom or any of these other massive data sets, and then basically look and say, hey, are the things that these two different cohorts based on UTM over and under index for different? Like, is one like 3x more likely to be interested in Major League Baseball versus I don't know what it would be, but that doesn't get you anything too granular, but at least might be a way to say, hey, they at least have different interests than one another, and I can maybe conclude that they are different audiences because of that. We've never done this before, by the way. That was just like a theoretical idea. So I don't know.
I like it. I think they're all ways to get to that answer. How helpful that answer ends up being,
Right.
is
Does it
like still
matter?
kind of TBD. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not really.
We did a thing, thinking about this over the last couple of weeks. We did an interesting thing similar to rolling reach, right? So what I did was we looked at how many unique people did we reach year to date. And then what we did was, like, over the last couple of weeks, we've had some successful ads that get really high engagement, and also the people that click through have a really high % new visits. So in my mind, I was like, oh, these are new audiences. These people have never been to the site before. According to our MTA, we're getting high engagement. It's also diverse creative. So I'm like, okay, this seems to check all the boxes. This is what top of funnel looks like. I was like, we figured it out, guys.
We did it. We did it.
Yeah, yeah. But then what we did was we said, how many people have we reached year to date? And it's 75.4 million people just for our EDC ads. That's our wallet business, everyday carry. And then what we did was we excluded these like quote unquote top of funnel ads from that to see how many unique people did we reach without those ads. Okay. And what I'll tell you is one had 200,000 net new people, and then the other ad had 400,000 net new people. That is, so just a couple 100,000 people, 200 CPMs, 400 CPMs, really
Wait,
not
Connor,
a lot.
what were these ads again that you like? Why did you exclude those ones? What was the differentiator?
One is a YouTube creator. So Jerry Rig Everything is like this really like content first ad. He's like shooting Cybertrucks against he's shooting wallets against a Cybertruck. Like this very unique content, gets high engagement, these high % new visits, traffic. So it seems like top of funnel ads. It seems like we're reaching a new audience. All the metrics that I would think would line up with a new audience are lining up here. The other one is a podcast ad that we've been running. Same sort of deal. High engagement, high % new visits. Both of these, I'm listing off a lot of numbers here, but one reached 4.6 million people, but only 200,000 of those people were new to the account. And that's what we did, this like very specific rolling reach like to that ad. The other one reached 6.1 million people, only 400,000, so less than 10%, 6.5% of all people reached were actually net new to the account. So what that tells me is actually we don't need to be reaching new people. We've reached a lot of people, 70 million. That's just our wallet business in the US too. Like that is like a really large percentage of all adults, much less male adults. So even when we're reaching these like, or serving these high engagement, high % new visit ads, those people aren't actually net new to the account. They've seen ads before. We're just finally hitting content that they're actually responding to. And I think that's like such a nuanced difference. But you
Of
can
like,
kind
is
of
it a
tease it
new
out of the
impression
account.
or is it a new click?
And it's a new click. Yeah, it's not a new
Yeah.
impression.
Yeah.
95% of people have seen our ads before this year, but they're finally clicking through on this new content. So it's actually not about reaching, it's not about reaching new audiences, at least for us. And in this example, it's really about getting new clicks. And that's like, I
Yeah.
think kind of interesting. I was geeking out
The
on
net
it.
new visit rate more than anything.
Right.
So what's I'm curious this exercise that you're doing with I presume you're setting this up with your reps because you're saying, okay, the reach on this, which is, Facebook's unique, like just net number of people that have seen it is in the millions, but then you're able to suss out what percentage of those are actually first getting
Yeah.
intro to the
I think
brand.
it's kind of hard to explain on a
Yeah, I
podcast,
figured.
but you can do it all in the ad account. Like you don't need a rep or anything. You just at the ad level, you go year to date, you just look at reach. And these are ads, they contain the name Jerry Rig. So if you just filter for Jerry Rig, we know that we reach 6.1 million unique people. We know that in the whole ad account, we reach 75 million unique people. If we exclude Jerry Rig from that, we reach whatever, like 74.5. And that tells us 500,000 of the total reach for that year comes from those Jerry Rig ads, which is less than 10% of all of the reach of that ad.
Yeah.
I am, to plug our 9operators.com newsletter, I've got a loom and sheet cooking up for Aaron Orndorff. So it'll be a resource in the newsletter moving forward because I think that'll be a better format to kind of break it down in.
So we use Prescient at HexClad. It's used by other top brands like Good American, Symbiotica, Timbuktu, Nude, and dozens more. Prescient AI, helping brands scale spend confidently with AI-powered marketing mix models. So if you want to check out Prescient AI's marketing mix modeling tool, go to prescientai.com/operators. That's prescientai.com/operators.
All right, I got a few questions. Why do you think this ad did such a good job of, again, I don't want to say reaching new people, but kind of moving people down funnel, getting new people to site?
Getting new people to click. I mean, I would just say it's like way more engaging. Like we've talked a lot about our content. We've been like very product based, very feature based. This one's more storytelling driven. You've got this really cool thing. He's like taping the wallet against the car. He's taping a target around it. He's got all these guns and he's shooting the wallet. It's also a very like, it's him the entire time talking about he's carried a Ridge wallet for like 5 years. So it's just like, if I think about quality content, it's just higher quality content. There's more of a story. There's more of like a person behind it, like being authentic and liking the Ridge. And I think that just attracts a different type of click than like our standard UGC mashups or static ads or something like that.
How's it converting? And do you guys always care about how it's converting? Like, do you think there's a time and a place? We're all performance advertisers. Do you think there's a time and a place for these ads that are getting people to site, but we don't necessarily care how it's converting?
So this is where I was struggling. Yeah, so this is a good question because this is where I was struggling. It's not converting. It hasn't scaled. There's been periods of time where it's converted well and I've been really excited. But it hasn't scaled. So it's currently not live in the account. And the reason why I went through that whole exercise of identifying whether it was reaching net new people is because I was like, oh, it would be much easier to justify if we could prove out we were reaching new people. It's converting decently. And I'm like, hey, look, yeah, maybe if this is top of funnel, if we can prove out these are net new impressions, people who are unfamiliar with the brand, then we can justify that like
For sure.
as kind of a different objective than our middle or bottom of funnel ads. But diving into it, it's like, oh, yeah, it's not quite reaching net new people. It's reaching the same people. There's maybe something unique about the click-through rate and the percent new visits of all those clicks. But anyway, yeah, tough to grapple with. And that's why we went through the whole exercise.
That's a good point. Kind of how do you justify it? That I think that's a good framing. Got me at least thinking about it, hopefully correctly, of what I normally look at when I'm trying to see if we reach a new person, because we are focusing on creative diversity and we'll have these different kinds of things. We look at percent of new. Percent of new is something we struggle with on Meta in Northbeam. It's much lower than we want it to be. So no matter what we try for the most part, but occasionally we will get an ad that'll have a higher percentage. Usually videos that feel a little bit more problem solution aware rather than just a specific product thing do better for us, different styles of video. So I think that's one. It totally makes sense. And we will justify it, kind of like we were talking about with like UGC last week. Like we will accept a slightly lower ROAS on that, especially if it has a higher percent of new. And I will also look at audience breakdowns for an ad or for a concept and see, are we getting delivery to any different ages, any different placements? I guess those are the main ones. So those are kind of how we do it currently, and I think that's helpful. Some people said maybe it's just the size of our business. Some people said, oh, you just know because you can scale it, or your back end looks better. But there's so many factors that could be from that. And I do think, and you guys won't be surprised with this, I do think the proper way to measure it would probably be with a holdout. Somebody said it. Jeremy Sohn said that. But theoretically, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reach incremental customers, right? And we're trying to acquire incremental customers. I actually remember we never ran it, but one of the first tests we ever considered doing with MetaRep was a creative diversity test. I think this is something they were putting budget behind maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago. Let's run side by side a conversion lift test of just standard creative in one campaign, and then let's run diverse creative in another, and let's see, are we acquiring more new customers more efficiently when we've got more diversity? So that's probably the gold standard, but most people aren't going to do that. I don't even think you need to. So that's why this question, I was curious about it.
Yeah. And the point around the holdout test is that just proves that you're driving incremental revenue, right? It doesn't actually prove that you've reached net new people. It just proves that it's good for your business, which is what the real goal is.
More important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you could just be reaching more people from the same core demo and acquiring them at an incrementally profitable rate.
Right.
Which, it sounds like, or go ahead, Cody.
No, I was just going to say, kind of in general, that's something we're thinking a lot about. So a lot of our spend goes to older audiences, a very good amount of it. And I think we do very well in that demographic, and I think we want to continue doing well. I think it's like a white market that a lot of people aren't serving in our space. But I do think we have a really big opportunity. We'll never be a Gen Z brand, but more in a millennial audience. But the thing that's hard for me to know, and I'm curious if you guys have any ideas on how would you go about looking into this, is when do we have to pivot? When can we no longer just scale to that same older demo and try to reach more people in that or convert more people in that? And when do we have to pivot and actually try to appeal to a slightly younger audience and try to, again, maybe it's reach new people, maybe it's convert people or get people, in funnel start considering us that haven't. But do you guys have any thoughts about that? And is that something that you guys have looked at of actually any data behind when are you starting to tap out an audience?
So we'll use, Tyson mentioned this when he was on, it's called TrackSuite, where it's kind of that always on surveying tool. And one of the things they give you is how many people are in your category. And they're very specific. They're like, how many people are in the premium cookware category? So I'll take a look at that every so often and kind of just I'll go big picture view on our business and be like, all right, from 2020 on, what's my best estimate on how many people that we've reached? And then I'll go look at that tracksuit and see what they're predicting our total TAM is at any given moment in time. I think that tool, Cody, we were talking about it, I think that's a great use case for it. Because I bet you guys haven't even come close to hitting that TAM in terms of reach. Because that boomer audience is huge, right? So that's one way I look at it. We're not even close to sniffing what our TAM is, and we've spent hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds of millions, but we spent 9 figures on media in the last 3 years for sure.
Have you guys done, we were just looking at penetration within the US, just all US men, we're at multiple percentage points. It's not that big, but it's is it possible for us to get to 10% of all US men? Could we sell them wallets? It sounds hard. We ultimately, just to have that level of penetration would be really, really hard, I think. So that would be one data point. Back to the rolling reach point, we've reached 180 million unique people over the last year and a half. That's just in the US again. And it's okay, yeah, that's a lot of people who are shopping online. You could think of that as saturating that audience. I think there's all sorts of ways to kind of refute that point. But it's another data point that you could use. So those are the two that we've been thinking about. And for us, we have way more of a focus on product development, which is a bit easier. Something like a NASA, NFL, MLB. We've got more partnerships coming up for next year that are very concerted efforts to appeal to a new demo. They might not be interested in our black gunmetal carbon fiber wallets, but will they get some really cool collab from an artist that they recognize? That's kind of our approach. So in terms of like awareness, I think we're like relatively saturated. That's what the other way to think about it would be like brand lift studies with Meta or something like that, where you could see you have like 40-50% brand recognition in your core demo. And then for us, we're just thinking about product development to like chip away at either the rest of that or chip away at people who are already familiar but just need some additional reason to finally purchase.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I do think like a aided and unaided brand survey are probably good here for Takana's point. I think that makes sense. Yeah, and I'm not thinking by any means that we've saturated a demo, but it's always like, where's your next dollar best spent? And like, Ridge might have 9% of the men's wallet business, and to go from 9 to 10 is probably going to be a lot harder than if you're going to get 1% of the ring business or 1% of the travel business. So it's more
So
about
that's
like,
one
where's your
way.
next dollar.
Totally. And we also, I mean, it's one of the reasons we launched like more female friendly colors in October of last year. We have like a lavender and a eucalyptus and a sea glass, because it is like, if you just, next dollar spent at many times of the year, it's best spent acquiring women. They're just like, that is completely unsaturated. And it's also, as in terms of like percent of dollars spent online, that's a way bigger market. So we just need like really small traction there for it to be meaningful for the business. So there's all sorts of ways, if you feel you're like running up against that ceiling, it can just inform strategies. Our EDC business, this is the last thing I'll say. EDC business, we're thinking about all these things because it's obviously far more mature. Doing 9 figures a year in wallets just in the US. So we're relying on newness, creative diversity. We're getting more creative with promotions to tap into more like price sensitive consumers. EDC requires all of that for us. Travel, rings, I'm like, I don't really think we need all that much newness. We've got awesome products in a couple core colors. We should be able to scale these categories like 2-3x before we have to start thinking about like demo expansion, partnerships, like deeper promotions, things like that. So it
Can I
all
play
just
devil's
depends on,
advocate on that a little bit?
yes.
Do you think you are reaching, or do you not think you're reaching a new audience with rings versus wallets versus travel?
No, we're totally reaching a new audience. Yeah, a lot of these are like, we're not necessarily creating a travel business by selling to existing wallet customers or even people that are
Sure.
familiar with our wallets.
Sure. You're doing it. You kind of acknowledge that you're likely doing it and expanding kind of your TAM, but you're just doing it with product expansion versus trying to market and appeal to them. And maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's the more effective way to do it.
Totally. I mean, that's definitely one way to do it. There's definitely one way to do it. So yeah, we're like on all fronts. We're focused on like, because actually, yeah, it's a great point. I'm thinking about these categories as separate. You're talking about saturating an audience at the brand level. So yeah, categories is a part of that. But I also think if you look at them against one another individually, they're at very different points in their like life cycles, and therefore require, or just EDC requires a far more nuanced approach than some of the more nascent categories that we have a much clearer path to growth without any newness, very little promos, all of that. Like there's still meat on the bone just from a straightforward acquisition perspective.
For sure, totally makes sense. But no, I think the collabs and the different partnerships to reach, like you said, the artists or the NHL or NBA, like that's brilliant and probably a good way to get like a subsection of those markets for your main business.
Connor, are you saying with the non EDC business that you're basically, you think you just have a lot more? I'm because I've been having this conversation with my team a lot with all the new funnels we've been building. Are you basically saying like we can just keep vertically scaling this? We don't necessarily have to go and create a bunch of new diverse ad. Like you will still probably create new ads, but like maybe not to the extent that you feel that you need to introduce creative diversity into your EDC business. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like, Cody was saying they do really well with like an older demo, and he's talking about like at what point do we more aggressively try to target like a millennial demo? And I think for a more mature business, that's an important discussion to be having. And that's what we're having on the EDC business. We're talking about, we crush it with our like, the persona that we talk about is the everyday dad. And it's like, okay, yeah, how do we appeal to Gen Z? How do we sell wallets to like 19-year-olds? That's an important conversation for us to have for a 9-figure business within wallets. For travel, we have 4 colors. We crush it with everyday dad, let's say. I think just those things, 4 colors and 1 core demo, we should be able to triple the size of our current travel business. That's my point, is that it just requires far less nuance to go from, let's call it $10 million this year to $30 million over the next 18 months, than going from 100 to 130 or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my point there. They're much simpler businesses. The path to scale is much clearer because they're less mature. We have a core demo that our product resonates with. We should just focus on acquiring those customers profitably and scaling that.
Yeah. I love that. I've been I was having a creative production roadmap call with Camera, head of ads, and Joanna, our director of paid media creative. And we're outlining this, and Joe's got a bunch of great ideas. And she's like, well, I'm like, our calendars get looking pretty full. And she's like, well, like, I still need to like find like a winning static and hex mills. I'm like, hold on. And I just like
Yeah.
screen shared for a second. I was like, here's how much we've spent on hex mills in the last 90 days. Here's how many first orders we've had on hex mills. Here's our blended CAC. Like, obviously that's not necessarily incremental, but it's like total net. And I showed her the number, and I'm like, we do not need to go find, I know from your POV, like looking in the ad account, just seeing that like maybe statics aren't doing as well as videos or whatever, that you feel that way. But I'm like, we do not need to go produce any more static for hex mills. We just need to spend more on hex mills because it's working for us.
Right.
And she's like, oh, okay. Like, I haven't looked at it that way. And showing her the blended performance was like, you don't always have to be optimizing and creating net new into oblivion. Like, sometimes you get a good MVP set up and you just vertically scale it, and you're always managing that bandwidth. But it was just interesting to hear you say that, because I want to go back to my team once this one goes out. I'm like, listen, Ridge Wallet's not necessarily creating 15 new rings ads this quarter. They're probably just spending more on rings as they have the performance to allow it to.
Yeah, basically. I mean, we're still creating a lot of video content. We're still creating a lot of static content, but it's less about like you don't
Angle
need
unlock.
to, angles, or I'd even say like we have some women's sizes. So people will be like, oh, should we target women's for rings? Like women users of like tungsten wedding bands or the silicone bands. And it's like all of a sudden you start like really fragmenting your time. And I think there's just like potentially massive consequences to that, especially when it's like, if we want to get to a $15 million a year ring business, like it really shouldn't have to come from like channel diversification, content diversification, demo diversification. It shouldn't take that level of diversification. Like we have something that works for men, and our focus should be scaling that largely on meta. And I think that should get us really far. I mean, and that's what we did with the wallet business initially too. So it's just a matter of like how you want the order of operations to look in terms of like level of nuance across content or channels, et cetera.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had people in a marketing meeting being like, hey, I think we should appeal to men better. Like, no joke. And I'm like, no, we shouldn't. Like, that's not what we should be doing right now by any means, you know? Like, you'd have to be $1 billion business before you try to do that, if anything. But it's the same thing even with like us expanding into Europe. It's just, I feel like there's a lot of feel in it. Like, obviously, we all know our data and, you know, we kind of know our growth trajectories, but there's probably a lot of feel in it, because I also do think on the other end, you do get some people that'll just continue to try to vertically scale over and over and over into oblivion. And like sometimes actually, you know, to play devil's advocate, what you do need is some horizontal scale, is whether that's a new channel, whether that's a new angle. It's just very hard to know. And you obviously don't want to do it before you have to, is kind of what Connor's saying.
Totally. Yeah. In terms of horizontal scale, I'd like that phrasing. Like we didn't realize how much we needed new wallet silhouettes. Like we have this core Ridge Wallet silhouette, 4 metal plates, elastic band, expands to hold 1 to 12 cards. We've kind of been like locked in there for 11 years or whatever. We came out with our MagSafe silhouette, so similar style, but has this MagSafe array, so it's like it can attach to your iPhone. Absolutely crushed. So much demand for like a new iteration of the core silhouette. And we have a lot planned. We have another one coming out in a couple weeks. So I'll be able to talk about that once it launches. Nice. But that was like a big surprise too, where it was like, oh yeah, we didn't realize we really needed horizontal expansion just within the wallet product category. We didn't necessarily need more key cases or pens or carabiners or like complementary products. We actually needed non-complementary products, whatever that's called, where they can replace one another, is actually what we needed. And that allows us to acquire more customers. So what do the most successful brands have in common? They have great profit margins. They're lean businesses. They're actually making money. This is something the D2C industry didn't do for a really long time. And number 2, they have a brand that consumers love. Now, what if I told you that you could achieve both using AI? The team at Richpanel has developed an AI that can significantly reduce your support staff while providing memorable customer service. So you can reduce costs while ensuring that consumers continue to love your brand. So here's how it works. The AI imports data from your existing help desk and uses this information to train itself. This entire process takes less than a day. Afterwards, it begins to automate numerous tasks, thereby reducing customer response times. We just switched to Richpanel at Ridge. We had been on customer. I didn't feel we had a modern stack for our customer experience team. What we're looking forward to doing is a number of things I just mentioned. We're going to reduce headcount. We're going to offer a better customer experience. We're going to make information more readily available to the consumers that are looking for it. And we think Richpanel is a great tool to do that. So the best aspect of the transition was its simplicity. We were ready to go live in 2 weeks with no data loss. Our team of 30 agents were quickly onboarded. And thanks to Richpanel's tutorial videos and user-friendly interface, it was all very seamless. If you're looking to leverage AI to save on support payroll and deliver a customer service experience that your customers will truly appreciate, check out richpanel.com and schedule a demo with their team.
So I have Tracksuit pulled up.
Okay.
So first off, how many total adults in the United States do you think there are according to Tracksuit?
I'm not even going to answer. I'm just going to embarrass myself. I'm going to like sew off.
I think it's total adults.
Total adults. This is, total adults.
300 million.
Close. 253.3 million.
Pretty good.
How many of those adults do you think are in the premium cookware category? And then the question they're using to define that is, in the past 3 years, have you purchased premium cookware? Note, by premium cookware, we mean super quality or superior quality design, performance, and longevity, so on and so forth.
12 million.
I think that's a really good guess.
12 million?
Yeah, I'll go lower. I'll go 8 million.
You guys are off by orders of magnitude. 149.6 million.
What?
They're qualifying to be in the premium cookware category.
You're telling
way.
me XCloud acquired 150 million customers over the last 3 years?
Oh my God.
No, that's total category. That's just total.
Yeah. No, I'm
yeah.
teasing.
What do you think Allclad's percent? So Allclad, for those that don't know, Allclad's like one of the longest players in the clad cookware space, which is like this. It's a layered pan construction that's good for heating and in evenness of heating and quickness of heating. They're one of the best players, like most notable players in this like premium cookware category. What do you think Allclad's percent awareness is of that? And I believe this is not of the 253. This is of the 150 that make up the category.
Got it. And sorry, the 150 that make up the category said they had purchased premium cookware in the last 3 years.
It was either yes or no, but I am open or likely to in the near future. Those are the two qualifying answers. And then straight up no was a disqualifying answer.
Right.
Total sample size, by the way, 4,900. So we approached 8,500 people and 4,900 qualified to participate in the premium cookware research since we began tracking the category.
Got it. What do I think the penetration is of Allclad?
Yes.
50.
Cody, you got one?
Is this awareness or purchase?
This is the percentage
Awareness.
of people. This is awareness. Yeah, just awareness. We can go to usage if we want, but this
I'm
is
gonna go
just
20.
being aware. 26% is Allclad, and they're the highest percent of all the companies that are included in the ones that we're tracking right now. So I think most brands aren't even sniffing their TAM. Or I think, you get there, but I think you got to be into the billions before we're not even sniffing our TAM in terms of awareness.
Are you guys on there? Can you tell us your percentage?
Yeah, I don't see why not. We're 23. We have 23% awareness.
That's sick.
That's great. That's really good.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think tools like this, as you start to get to like seriously needing to understand those questions, I think like a tracksuit's pretty helpful.
Wait, so Allclad's 26. You're 23.
Yep.
That's great.
Competitor average is 18.
But Allclad's been around so much longer.
Allclad's been around for so much longer. I think we've made huge strides towards their awareness because they don't do e-com. Like they are.
You guys should be really proud of that. Like that's amazing.
The problem is we don't have the version of TrackSuite where we can go back and look at like 4 years over time, which is what I really want to do here. But yeah, it shows the power of direct to consumer, paid social advertising, right?
Yeah.
You could maybe try, we look at brand search queries a lot. So like brand search queries, XCloud versus Allclad, you could look over the last 5 years. That would be an interesting comparison. I love pulling up the chart Ridge Wallet versus Men's Wallet. We've surpassed the non-branded term, which I think is pretty cool. So we're like
You're
the
saying just like
largest.
Google search trends.
Yeah. Google Trends. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was
same.
gonna ask if you like brand queries versus Google search, because I do like going and messing around with Google search trends every once in a while to see how things are moving around. All right, should we move on? we got stuck on that one for a while.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, so Nate Lagos is on a podcast with Sarah Levinger, and Nate says, I think that cheap content gets you cheap attention, and then the second half is, and cheap attention doesn't convert on expensive products. That's Nate's take. Kind of a you attract what you put out there. Connor, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's super accurate. I think that's really, really accurate. Nate sells $400 wooden watches.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about it just depends on how you want to define cheap content. And I think that's where maybe like people might differ. When I think cheap content, I think of like the really gimmicky, I saw some sort of like really kind of over the top, like borderline lying ad, and it had like a big markdown on it and the whole thing. And like, yeah, that's what I would describe as cheap content. And you're not going to sell a $400 wooden watch if you run ads like that. Now, what I don't think is cheap content is like organic social content. I think organic social content can be thought of as cheap. It can be produced cheap, but it could totally sell higher end stuff if done well. So that'd be the only distinction I would make, but
Yeah.
largely totally makes sense. The
Yeah.
spammy, cheap content, you're really only going to be able to sell like lower AOV products that are on promo, or at least you're going to find those two things highly correlated, I would think.
Mhm. Yeah, native does not necessarily equal cheap, is what you're saying. I agree with that. I think it's like the clickbaity stuff where what you're presenting in the ad doesn't necessarily match what's on the product page or landing page. That's what I would consider like cheap, trashy content. There's definitely some brands that come to mind that I will not name here, but I mean, that's our whole strategy with like our upper funnel to bottom of funnel play. Like we put super premium, high production value content into YouTube, streaming TV, linear TV, knowing that that's going to be the first touch point, knowing there's a certain level of expectation with those channels. And our hypothesis is that if we do that, people are going to get to the end of that creative and have a really good association between Hexclad and premium. And I wouldn't say that our social content's cheap. It's just native, a lot more native at least. So then we're giving them the native stuff more middle, bottom of funnel, still top of funnel too. But I agree with Nate. That's why we've taken that approach of only producing really high production value, storytelling driven stuff for those upper funnel channels.
Now, do you think that is do you think it's the most effective way for you to do upper funnel, like across all audiences? Or do you think there is like, I saw, this is way different than what you guys sell, but it was a Mando, which is the like, it's some sort of like deodorant product targeted towards men. And they do really great TV ads. I was at a hotel a couple of weeks ago and like got random ads at like 11 p.m. or whatever. And they crushed, and they were super like cheap feeling, frankly. It was like UGC and they had like things overlaid, but it was really well done. And I thought it like qualified me to purchase the product really effectively. I could imagine something like that working for Hexclad for certain audiences. Do you guys feel that way, or like is it really a brand choice? Like, hey, we want to remain elevated and premium, like across as much of top of funnel as possible.
Yes, we've actually been having some conversations about that. I think we made a conscious decision that for the rollout, we wanted to have that premium feel. In order to do that, we needed to have the premium shot, premium feeling content. I totally think that as long as it's well done and there's a really tight narrative and story, that even a native feeling asset that has a great story to it and is really well done, like you can still give that feeling of, wow, this is a really great product. So I think like man on the street stuff would be really interesting for us, and more native like streaming TV ads, as long as the storytelling was super dialed, could absolutely work. We're definitely not gonna call it quits at like the high production value studio shot stuff. If you see that ad again, let me know. I wanna check it out, because we've been finally having some conversations with our head of content about a few concepts that are more, lo-fi, more native type stuff. And I've seen like Farmer's Dog, excuse me.
Right.
I've seen some of their like UGC chopped into their YouTube and streaming ads, and it looks really nice. It's a good it's a good valence I have towards the product and the brand after I see that content.
Yeah. So anyway, back to it. My point was Nate's comment is totally accurate depending on how you define cheap. And I think people might be too, they might define it incorrectly, frankly.
Yep. Yep.
So anyway, yeah, nuanced conversation there.
Cody, what do you
I
think?
agree with it. Yeah, no, I agree with it in general. I've had conversations with Matt from Lomi about it as well, because I don't think UGC works very well for for them, for Lomi. I would say for the longest time it didn't work for us. I do think we're getting closer to cracking it, but I do think for lack of a better term, like the branding, maybe saying the creative, even of our direct response ads is very important. And to us, that comes down to like the quality of the video, and maybe the quality is important because you have to be able to see the makeup being applied to see the effect. I also think like the aspirational nature of the creator makes a big difference. And so it's totally fine if it's shot on an iPhone, it doesn't have to be shot on a DSLR or a Red or anything like that. But I do think having good lighting is very important. I do think having the creator be very aspirational is very important. So I totally agree with Connor. I don't think it's cheap. I would say for the majority of brands, almost all direct consumer brands, like I do think you would devalue a brand if you're like Chanel and you're running UGC, like largely, but that's not who's listening to this podcast. They're not doing direct response in general. I do think that devalues it. But if you're running direct response ads, I think you should be totally fine with running UGC. But I do think there is a way to do it where it does feel very cheap. And I think part of it is, who is in your ads. Part of it is what you're saying. Part of it is just how it's shot. Is it good lighting? Just does it look presentable? But I think there's a very on brand premium way to do UGC, and there's a way not to. And I think there are brands that do a good job of it. And I think as we're getting closer to cracking that UGC nut, I think we're able to do a little bit better because we're not luxury, but we are a little bit higher price point than like a masstige brand. So I do think it matters. Like if I saw a Tesla ad and it looked cheap, or it didn't look safe, I'm not going to feel safe, or I'm not going to feel like splurging on something like that. So I totally do think it's important.
Well, yeah, this is one thing that I struggle with because like we sell premium priced wallets. Like our AOV is $120. That is like far more than most men have ever spent on a wallet in their life. So we definitely land at this like premium price point. We're not like Gucci or a Louis Vuitton wallet or something. But it's definitely premium. And what I struggle with, and I think it's just kind of an interesting thing for like marketing leaders thinking over really long time frames is, and I don't know the answer to it. I think it is undeniable that you can do cheaper ads. Let's just call them that. Like what I'm referring to is undoubtedly cheaper than like our more elevated content. That can unlock incremental customers that we can acquire and we can profit because of that. I don't know what that means for the brand over a 10-year time horizon or 15 or 20 years. So like to the Hexclad example, if you told me, oh yeah, we are locked in on premium content because we want to be like, we think that is what's required to be a generational brand, I'd be like, dude, I totally believe that. Like, I think that's like a totally
Right.
good strategy.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if running those cheaper ads like removes that long-term outcome of becoming a generational brand. I hope not. We err on the cheaper side depending on certain channels and things. But I don't know the answer. Cody brought up Chanel. Like if you want to be a brand like Chanel, or if we want to be like a Mont Blanc or a Yeti or someone like that, have we disqualified ourselves by running cheaper feeling ads? I'd like to not think so, but like I think some brand marketers would argue that those two things are orthogonal.
I also think there's a push and a pull, and I think that's why you do all of the branding stuff. That's why you do the out of the home. That's why you do a lot of the reach stuff, a lot of the pretty stuff.
Right.
It's like depends what your goals are, and if you're just trying to build brand, if you're just trying to acquire customers and grow. For us, it's a combination of both of them. We obviously have to think about our today, and we do need to acquire customers profitably now, but we do want to be perceived as a certain way. And so we just want to do both. We want to flex up and down. And I think that's what your guys' brands do pretty well of as well.
There's also the question of, I think the Airbnb case study the Airbnb situation is the perfect case study of this, where they hit a certain inflection point where to unlock more growth, they actually pulled way back on performance marketing, which I believe is what got them to a certain level of growth, and have totally like hit an inflection point and gone totally into brand marketing using these channels that you traditionally see, big time brand spots, TV, streaming, YouTube. Like I don't think they do a lot of Facebook ads anymore or search ads anymore, even though it's like it's a digital conversion, right? It's an e-commerce I mean, functionally, it's an e-commerce transaction. So at some point, you know, you hit that level of brand recognizability where I don't know when that is. Like, I don't how big is Yeti, Connor? And they still seem to do a lot of Facebook ads and search ads. But do you know if their media mix has maybe swung more into like brand marketing channels than it has into more classic DR conversion channels?
They're interesting because they have like a really strong like retail presence. That's how their
Yeah.
brand was really built. And then now
Yeah.
they're actually moving, like they're trying to push into e-com. And I think they're starting with brand building channels, out of home, TV, things like that, but are pushing more into like Facebook ads and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're interesting. Airbnb is an interesting one. I'll have to look back at that. I remember reading a case study that was like, I think they just found a lot of their search marketing was like not incremental. So they cut a lot of that and then moved into brand awareness, which I
Yeah, that's
think
what I
is like,
read too.
yeah, kind of what you're talking about.
One thing, like on this note, so there's the whole like make ugly ads movement, and I agree for the most part that you know you have a better chance standing out almost by fitting in and not trying to look like an ad. But I also don't agree entirely. Like, there are some people that think you should never put brand fonts on your ads, and that'll never
Right.
perform, or you should never shoot studio. And I think if your only your creative strategy is to make ads that don't look like ads, like that's not a very full creative strategy. We have, and I know your guys' content as well, but we've spent millions behind things that are shot 4K, 1080, studio, branded fonts as well. So I just don't agree with that notion entirely. There are times where you do. We've definitely had some winners that are shot on an iPhone. Like the audio is not even great. You can hear background noise. Like it just looks so not like an ad that it obviously performs, and that largely is what performs on social, but it's not entirely there. And I don't think you should completely discount also having some more branded stuff. It's still got to be DR. You still got to know how to convert people, but just you can still have it be DR and have branded captions on it.
Hmm.
Totally. I totally agree with that. And that's like what we've really tried to nail. It's a really tricky kind of mix to find, but what are the constraints you put on your performance creative team so that there is some brand cohesion? And it's like, we could have better performing ads, at least from a very strict short-term DR perspective, with like just really terrible headlines. Like we had one, this actually made it into the ad account. And I was like, I hate this. But it was like, it was something like the cheapest the Ridge has ever been. We had like a wallet on promo that we're trying to move through from an inventory standpoint. And I'm like, dude, I don't care how good this is performing. I'm like, this is just a horrendous like way to present the brand. That's a really easy place to draw the line. But other places to draw the line are around fonts and how you do captions and where you do logo overlays and things like that. And there are just like small constraints that over time I think can really create a more cohesive brand experience and like ultimately elevate the perception of the company.
Could not agree more. Yeah, I think every brand's got to have that line and know where it is. I could not agree more.
Yeah. And you got to walk that line sometimes, you know?
For sure.
So we got a rather controversial take from Cody. Cody tweeted, when someone tells me we should run retargeting in our ad account with a meme, suggesting that Cody's not a big fan of retargeting. Cody, break it down.
Well, hold on. We got to talk about the meme. Are you guys a fan of The Wire? Did you guys watch it?
I did. I watched not the whole thing, but a good amount of it.
Unfamiliar, but
Yeah. Oh,
go
man,
ahead.
it's the best. My favorite show ever. I think I've watched it like 7 or 8 times each. It's like my favorite show. So it's this guy Slim Charles talking to this other guy Bodie, and the quote I just saw it. Somebody tweeted it, but it goes, "Yeah, now well, the thing about the old days, the old days." And I was just like, where does it apply to ecom? Like, what has changed? And I think that's like one of the biggest ones that has changed the most. Is just for me personally. Again, I only have access to our ad account. I just have not seen retargeting be a worthwhile endeavor post iOS in the last few years. I still see a lot of people running it. So it's, I don't have strong feelings about it. To me, it was more of just like a fun thing, kind of a joke. Like if you run retargeting, great. I just think for us, like I shared earlier, we have such a hard time getting Meta to not retarget in our prospecting campaigns that the last thing I want to do is spend any more money on retargeting. Like no matter what we try to do, we are still retargeting, we're still remarketing, going after past customers, past site visitors. So like why would I put any more budget into those? I want to do everything I can to try to reach new visitors. That's what we find at least. And by the way,
we don't.
I would have thought one more thing, and I'm very curious to hear if you guys do it. I would have thought that maybe like retargeting would be like very good in platform, but maybe not as incremental. for us, retargeting is not even good in platform. Like we see actually a worse 1-day click and a worse in platform ROAS on retargeting campaigns now, which is wild to me.
Interesting. See, we have pretty good net new visit rate so far, or I shouldn't say so far, still, from Facebook. And with our consideration period, I want to be retargeting to people. Like that's why we always roll it out during a sale period. We don't always have it on during an evergreen moment, although we always do have at least some mix of ASC, which is always a lower percentage net new visit rate. But just with our consideration period, like I want to be hitting people with ads, with emails. I want them to be seeing organic social posts. Like I want to be hitting them wherever I can in different channels with different types of content and getting that conversion. And like we do see, higher 1-day click ROAS, lower CAC on those remarketing campaigns. The caveat is remarketing, not loyalty, right? I think those two terms often get conflated. Like I'm always still making sure that it's first time orders and that we're not accidentally, even though we have a bunch of exclusions on, actually just showing ads to previous buyers. So Northbeam, I'll be checking that first time buyer versus repeat buyer, just making sure that split looks good. And as long as that's the case, like, yeah, I'm totally down to run remarketing. I think it's important for our business type, but it's totally dependent on the business model and the price point and the consideration period, I think.
So what split, if you're able to share, what split do you see? So what percent of new visits do you see on your like prospecting stuff? And what new customer percentage do you see in Northbeam?
I'm gonna have to
I
come
feel
in
like
and
you guys are
look.
way higher than we are.
Yeah, let me pull up my Northbeam because it's been a minute since I looked.
For context, we're
I'll
like
tell you.
on a
I'll tell you
yeah.
ours.
Let's hear you.
Well, so we very rarely purposefully run retargeting. Our historical retargeting campaigns, if you go way back, were typically at like a 40 to 50% percent new visits. Today, like this just came up recently. We had some ASC campaigns that were like quote unquote crushing it, and they had 55% new visits. And I'm like, guys,
Okay.
this is like, I don't mind. Like, we don't necessarily have to turn it off. We have to know what this is. This is not prospecting. We can't expect to like crank budgets here for this to perform well for any extended period of time. It is, these people are coming back for the second time. So that's what we would consider right now. Retargeting is like 50 to 55%. And
What do you
then
see on your regular
prospecting,
menu? Yeah.
yeah. So like anywhere, like always like mid 70s, 75%. And then I mentioned some of the ones earlier that are really high and honestly performed pretty well. Those will get like high 80s, 90% new visits.
That's pretty high. Yeah, I mean, even 70 is above us, so that's great. I would
Yeah.
kill for that. But even 70, if you're like doing all of your exclusions, like that still shouldn't happen. Like that's still not
Mm-hmm.
super high. It's obviously high. Yeah, we're mid 60s is where we are if we're feeling good about it on a good day. Depending on like how much we think we've saturated an audience. Like right now, we're coming off of this promo period where we've just been spending really heavily on the same creative. Like we're definitely starting to drop into like the high 50s on some, definitely more so on ASC. So we always make sure we look at percent new customer percentage, and we'll compare like a 1-day click versus like a true new customer 1-day click, just to make sure, because we might find a better 1-day click on ASC, but it might be less new. So actually, our manual on a new 1-day click is actually going to beat it out.
Our account average last 30 is 67%, but our highest true prospecting campaign is 86%, our highest spending true. And then we have a bunch of like full funnel stuff and like ASC stuff that's like our number one spending ASC is 56%, but then our next, like our creative testing is 92%. Like if I go into our 4th of July sale though, like that campaign as a whole is like 67, but we also have like full funnel built out into there. So it's some of those ad sets are top of funnel, some of them are bottom of funnel. So like our remarketing to engagers that in that campaign, 50%, but then everything else is true top of funnel and the lowest one is 87%. So I don't know it's so weird too, because I guarantee you, Cody, we probably have the same exact setup in terms of exclusions. And it's just like, I don't know what it is. I can't even pinpoint why it is exactly.
I don't know. It drives me crazy, but yeah, I think my point is obviously do whatever works for your ad account. Like back in the old days, like a 70-30, prospecting retargeting split is like almost what you wanted, or like 60-40. And that's like where it feels like we're at. It's just so hard to exclude. So I don't know. Do whatever you want. Have you guys actually ran like a holdout on retargeting at all for either of you?
No, we haven't, but like the reason I'm confident, like I'm going back to this full funnel July 4th, for example, like our 1-day click on that remarketing to that remarketing stack, which is a 365 engagers, 180 website visitors, 2.17, just that's first time. 1-day click, first time only. And then all the prospecting is like 0.7 to 0.76. So that just gives me confidence that it's working for us. But I think a holdout would be interesting.
Yeah, we haven't tested, but for me, not worthwhile just because we haven't seen even good attribution on it. But otherwise, it could be pretty interesting. It could be one of those like brand search things. So
Would you be able to spend enough into a holdout on remarketing to even get, because that's one of the limits of like holdout testing is you have to spend enough to measure a difference in your baseline. Like because remarketing audiences by nature are limited. I'm curious if you probably would be able to with how much you guys spend, and we all spend top of funnel.
Probably with how much you guys spend as well. Yeah, we did run it one like a 3-cell with like retargeting plus reach, but yeah, I haven't done it by itself. But yeah, if anyone has a way to get that new visit percent up, maybe it's full circle to the beginning, maybe it's creative, and maybe we just got to tap into some new audiences. Definitely, please let me know. I would kill for that. But we're obviously doing
cheap ads.
Cheap ads. Ugly ads. Maybe that's it.
Cody, word on the street is that Cody will pay you 5% of ad spend on all ad spend that goes into traffic that's above 75% net new visit rate. Wow, word on the street. Can't confirm,
if it's
but
conversion optimized. Because our reach campaign is 95% new right now.
Good deal. That's a wrap on episode 20 of the Marketing Operators Podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Thank you, as always, to our sponsors, Motion, Prescient, and Richpanel. Hey, if you like the Marketing Operators Podcast, make sure you subscribe and share it with some friends.